I was on a mission to get justice for Shanann, Nico, Bella, and Celeste. They deserved to have their story told.
I think about, like, did I cause this?
What in the world is going on?
Hey, are you Chris?
A lot of it wasn't adding up.
The disappearance of a pregnant Frederick woman and her 2 children has captured the nation's attention.
This house is not complete without anybody here.
We see a lot of horrible stories where a husband kills his wife, but this one's different.
Do you know what true evil looks like? Have you ever wondered what goes through the mind of a man who destroys his entire family in cold blood, then stands in front of cameras, pretending to be the heartbroken husband? On the surface, Chris Watts seemed like an average family man, a devoted husband, a loving father, a man with a steady job, a nice home, and a wife expecting their 3rd child. But behind closed doors, something much darker was brewing, and on one horrifying morning in August 2018, he committed an act so unspeakable that it shook the world to its core. But what drove Chris Watts to murder his wife and 2 innocent daughters? Was it a crime of passion, a desperate escape, or something even more sinister? And when he finally confessed, did he tell the whole truth? This is the chilling story of Chris Watts, his lies, his betrayals, and the confessions that revealed the unthinkable. But before going into the details, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. On August 13th, 2018, a frantic 911 call came into the Frederick Police Department. A concerned friend, Nicole Atkinson, was on the line, explaining that her friend, 34-year-old Shanann Watts, was missing. Nicole described how she had repeatedly called and texted Shanann, who was 15 weeks pregnant, but received no response. Her car was still in the garage, and her shoes, ones she wore every day, were still by the front door. Nothing was adding up. The dispatcher asked for Shanann's name, to which Nicole replied, Shanann Watts, before adding that her husband, Chris Watts, hadn't been helpful in locating her.
County Communications, this is Stacey. Hi, Stacey. My name's Nicole, and I'm calling because I'm concerned about a friend of mine. She's 15 weeks pregnant, and she wasn't feeling well over the weekend, and I have called and texted. I've come to her house. She's not answering the door. She's not responding to text messages, phone calls. I've had other friends reach out to her. None of us can get her to respond to us, and her car is here. What's her name? Shanann Watts. And her husband's name is? His name is Chris Watts. I just want to know she's okay.
The news of Shanann's disappearance, along with her 2 daughters, Bella, 4, and Celeste, 3, quickly spread. This wasn't just another missing persons case. It was a deeply unsettling mystery that would soon grip the nation. The Watts family had appeared to be the embodiment of the American dream. They lived in a beautiful home in Frederick, Colorado. Chris worked as an oil field operator, while Shanann was a dedicated mother who worked from home in marketing. She frequently posted on social media, showcasing her seemingly perfect life with Chris and their 2 daughters. But beneath the facade, something was deeply wrong.
She was a very loving, caring, outgoing person. Chris worked for an oil company. He was a mechanic. And Chris was quiet, but he was real friendly about helping people with the cars and stuff like that. And Shanann was a marketing person who was able to work from her house. That's what gave her the opportunity to stay at home with her children, which was her #1 passion. Bella was 4. She was definitely more the quiet thinker, really happy, really go-lucky. She would always wave and say hi whenever we were out in the backyard and they were outside playing. Cece was 3, and she was an absolute firecracker. And it would always make you smile just to hear her laugh because she had that really loud, just belly laugh. Chris and Shanann seemed to be wonderful parents.
We did it again. Really?
Really?
That's awesome.
Shanann was 15 weeks pregnant with a little boy that she was going to name Nico.
Guess when you want to, it happens.
They had the 2.5 kids. They had a nice, beautiful house. They both had great careers that, from what it seemed, that they definitely loved. And they just seemed to be that all-American great family.
Officer Scott Coonrod was the first to respond to Nicole's call. Upon arrival, he noted that everything seemed eerily undisturbed. The house was locked from the inside. Shanann's car, with the girls' car seats inside, was still parked in the garage. If she had left, how could she have done so without a vehicle? The officer called Chris, who claimed that Shanann had taken the kids on a play date. He promised to be home soon. However, his tone lacked urgency. When Chris arrived, he unlocked the front door and led the officer inside. The house was spotless, almost unnaturally so. Nothing appeared ransacked or out of place, but some details stood out. Shanann's purse, phone, and medication were still there. Even Celeste's EpiPen, something Shanann never left behind due to her daughter's severe allergies, was still on the kitchen counter. The only thing missing was the top sheet from the bed. Something wasn't right. Chris cooperated with the officer, answering questions and allowing them to search the home, but he was oddly calm, displaying no sense of urgency or panic over his missing pregnant wife and daughters. He told them that he had last seen Shanann at around 5:30 a.m. before he left for work.
How you guys doing?
Hi.
Here, Nicole?
Yes.
Officer Coonrod from the Frederick Police Department responded to this call for service. He makes contact with Nicole and her son.
I've called, I've texted. Her car's in the garage, her shoes she wears every single day right in the front door.
Even before Nicole called Frederick Police, she had reached out to Shanann's husband. His response to her was, oh, she was going on a play date today with the girls, she must be there. She told him that she was going to call the police, and Watt's response was, well, hold on a minute, I'm on my way back, I'll be there in 45 minutes.
They have the thing flipped up here.
Oh, what about the garage door?
I don't
Is
know.
there... I'm just gonna check the back, see if I can see anything. How you doing? You seen your neighbors today? No? Okay. Oh, we're just trying to get a hold of her.
Yeah, I think she's diabetic, to be honest.
Oh, is she?
Something with her blood sugar, I thought. We were thinking about Shanann maybe having a spike in her blood pressure or dropping her blood pressure, and she might be in the house unconscious with the girls. And we were thinking, okay, we need to figure out how to get into this house.
What's Chris's phone number? Hey, Chris, Officer Coonrod for the police department. Pretty good. So, do you have any idea where your wife is? Okay. Right. Well, my concern is her car's here. They're saying she is diabetic. I don't want her if she's upstairs and can't respond. About how far out are you? Okay. All right. Thanks. This female is diabetic. Unknown if she is home, though. Husband is on his way.
Police department, if anyone's inside, make yourself known.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see anything out of place. I'm not hearing kids. I'm not hearing anything. Scott, how you doing?
How's it going?
So this is the only vehicle she would have?
Only one that, yeah.
She would drive? Okay.
The fact that Shanann's car was still in the garage, the car seats that belonged to Celeste and Bella were still in the car. It didn't sound like there was anybody in the home. The house was locked up from the inside. So these few things starting to add up to the officers like, this isn't right. There's something uncomfortable about what I'm walking into here.
Mind if I come in, Chris? Okay. You checked upstairs, she's not there. I just want to make sure she's not passed out somewhere. Is she diabetic? You mind if I look around? Okay, thanks.
From the beginning, Chris Watts was very compliant and very cooperative. That allowed us to search the Watts residence.
All the girls' blankets are gone. Their blanket they sleep with, they don't leave anywhere without them.
Good. Is any of her clothes, anything like that missing?
Yeah.
It didn't look like she went through and packed up a bag or anything.
All that was bombs.
She tell you anything about leaving, moving out?
Not moving out. I mean, the last time I talked to her was this morning. She said she's going to take the kids to a friend's house, and then she asked where she was going to be. And then I've texted her today and never heard anything. But cars here. Cars
Right.
are here. Unless somebody came and picked her up. But the people that I know, nobody's heard from her, nobody's seen her.
In all missing person investigations, we usually want to start from the inside out. The people that are closest to the person that's missing, The person that last saw that person that's missing, Chris Watts, by his own words, was the last person that saw Shanann Watts.
This is her purse?
That's her purse. It's her medication. She takes these, her medication's still in here.
Along with the purse and Shanann's own medications, Celeste had a very significant allergy, causing Shanann to have to take with her an EpiPen everywhere she went. That EpiPen's on the countertop.
Her phone's here.
Does she work?
Yeah, she works from home.
Oh, from home?
She works, this is her lifeline.
The people that know Shanann know that she was very attached to her cell phone. That was something that she would never leave the house without. And to have the purse, her car, the car seats, all of those things still left inside seemed very, very strange.
You guys have any kind of issues, marital issues?
On Monday, August 13th, we had a missing pregnant mom and her 2 young daughters. The pregnant mom was named Shanann Watts, and her little girls, Bella, who was 4, and Celeste, who was 3, were also missing.
People rarely leave without a trace. When little kids are involved especially, that's nearly impossible to just vanish the way that it seemed like Shanann, Bella, and Celeste had done.
Watts told the officer that when he leaves to go to work in his work truck at 5:30 or so in the morning, that Shanann is still in bed, that the girls are each in their own beds, and that's how he left them. While the officers are still over at the Watts home, they're contacted by the Watts neighbor, Nathan.
However, when a neighbor, Nathan, offered to show police his security camera footage, Chris's demeanor noticeably shifted. Nathan's footage was revealing. It captured Chris backing his truck into the garage at 5:27 a.m. and making multiple trips between the house and his vehicle. His explanation, he was loading tools for work. However, no other movements were detected, no sign of Shanann or the girls leaving the house. As the footage played, Chris stood in the neighbor's home, looking away from the screen, fidgeting with his phone. Nathan later admitted that Chris's behavior was off. He seemed nervous, defensive, and unable to maintain eye contact. As a father, Nathan later said, "My eyes would have never left that screen." At this point, investigators knew something wasn't adding up. The Frederick Police Department, realizing the gravity of the situation, called in the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and the FBI. They began treating this as more than just a missing persons case. It was now a criminal investigation. As authorities dug deeper, they learned more about Chris and Shanann's marriage. Friends reported that their relationship had been strained for months. Shanann had recently returned from a trip, during which she had expressed fears that Chris was growing distant. It was later discovered that Chris had been having an affair with a co-worker. Investigators pressed him about this, but he initially denied it.
Nate came forward and showed the police that surveillance video, and Chris was there too. And all this was captured on the body camera.
If any action would have happened, any cars or anything left your house, I would have known.
Like right in that area, it should have fixed me.
Oh, it'll pick up anything coming down the street this way.
You know where that trigger is?
Oh, yeah. At 5:27 a.m., I had noticed that there was a motion on my camera of Chris backing his truck up into the driveway and then into the garage.
Usually park out there on the side, like get everything back in. It's easier to run everything out there, all the tools that I had to bring in.
What the video shows is Chris making several trips from the garage out to the driver's side of the vehicle, which is on the other side of the car from the angle that the camera is placed. So you can't see what, if anything, he's putting in the car per se.
Loading my stuff up in my coolers, my water jugs, my book bag, my computers, some of the tools that I have in the toolbox. I knew I was going to have to do some pumping into rubbers today. That's why I was out so far.
I was definitely hoping to catch Shanann leaving with Bella and Celeste. I was hoping we might catch somebody coming and picking them up to take them on a play date like Chris had said, but we had picked up no other motion or anything like that coming from their house.
The camera on the front of Nathan's house shows that truck leaving at 5:45, and a part of a thorough investigation at a very early stage is creating a timeline. What time did the husband leave? Where was the wife? Where were the children at these particular times? And they're really starting to fill in those gaps.
Chris, I had noticed that he wasn't watching the tape. He was looking down at his phone a lot. He was looking away a lot. And every time he did say something, he was trying to prove a point.
No cars came through because I guarantee with the headlights, it picked up the headlights.
Oh yeah. And my vigilance said that at 5:27, my garage door was left open.
I definitely was watching Chris's body language. And at that point in time, he definitely could have been freaking out because his wife was gone and his children were gone. I just personally thought the way he was acting was a little strange. As a father, like, my eyes would have never left that screen.
No. The officer, even at this point in time, with the things that he is seeing, it has to keep an open mind. You can't start having tunnel vision on one person right away to the exclusion of everything else. But there is a sense that we need to start looking at this from a criminal investigation standpoint, not just a welfare check anymore.
We really needed to go back into the Watts residence and do a thorough forensic search of that house.
Hi, are you Chris?
Chris, yes.
Chris, Officer Lyons with the Frederick Police Department. This office Perez.
Chris was compliant, cooperative. Our CSIs went in and searched for evidence, blood stains, signs of cleanup. We didn't see signs of struggle in the house. Things weren't knocked over. Things weren't broken and damaged.
They are really organized people.
Canines, cadaver dogs had gone through to pick up scents. We did notice the top sheet of the bed was missing, which we thought was a little out of place considering how clean everything else was. We didn't find any evidence inside the house.
The Frederick Police Department reached out to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, as well as the FBI, and requested assistance with a missing person investigation. We ran criminal histories on both Chris Watts and Shanann Watts. Neither one of them had a criminal record. So part of the investigation, I needed to know who Shanann was. And so I started looking at her Facebook page. I can kind of appreciate her attitude, I guess, sometimes. I come from a long line of Italian women, so we're very strong, sassy, assertive. And that's how I pictured Shanann. It was obvious she loved being a mom, she loved being a wife, and she loved what she did for work.
The Frederick Police Department, they did a neighborhood canvass. They knocked on a lot of doors. They started contacting businesses in the area that might have surveillance videos.
How are you? What's going on? We are looking for her and for her kids.
When confronted with evidence, he finally admitted to the infidelity, but not to any involvement in his family's disappearance. Chris was brought in for questioning. Detectives noted his odd behavior. He showed no genuine concern, no emotion. When they suggested he take a polygraph test, he agreed. The results were damning. The examiner told him, "You failed." Chris's body language shifted. He crossed his arms, took deep breaths, and avoided eye contact. It was then that he made a shocking request. He wanted to speak to his father. Sitting alone with his dad, Chris finally cracked. He made a partial confession but twisted the narrative. He claimed that Shanann had strangled their daughters in a fit of rage, and in response, he strangled her in retaliation. Investigators knew this story didn't add up. The evidence pointed to something far more sinister. After intense interrogation, Chris finally admitted the horrifying truth. In the early hours of August 13th, he strangled Shanann in their bed. Their daughters, Bella and Celeste, woke up and saw their mother's lifeless body. Still, Chris proceeded with his plan. He drove his daughters, alive, to his work site at an oil field. There, he smothered them one by one before disposing of their bodies in oil tanks and burying Shanann in a shallow grave nearby.
I hope that she's somewhere safe right now and with the kids. I just want them back. I just want them to come back. And if they're not safe right now, that's what's tearing me apart. Because if they are safe, they're coming back. But if they're not, this has got to stop. Like, somebody has to come forward.
So we're all watching Chris's first interview basically live on the 5 o'clock news.
Did you guys get into an argument before she left?
It wasn't like an argument. We had an emotional conversation, but I'll leave it at that. But I want everybody to just come home. Like, wherever they're at, come home. That's what I want.
Chris talked about how he and his wife had an emotional conversation right before she went missing, which I thought was strange, that you would talk about that on the news.
Shanann, Bella, Celeste, if you're out there, just come back. Like, if somebody has her, just Please bring her back.
The concern that he professed to have for his wife and kids seemed very feigned, seemed very cold and calculated. Even though people grieved differently, he was so extraordinarily calm and was internally inconsistent in what he was saying and how he was saying it, that it raised a lot of red flags. It just really struck everyone as, what in the world is going on?
If my family was missing, I would be an absolute wreck. So the fact that he was clean cut, real calm, real cool, kind of seemed collected, definitely put a big red flag up for me.
I need to see everybody. I need to see everybody again. This house is not complete without anybody here. Please bring her back.
I think we were all in shock, and I recall immediately turning around to Special Agent Coder of the FBI, who I had never met before, and I just said, oh, we need him in a room with us that's recorded, and we need to get his story down right now. We had already predetermined that Special Agent Coder with the FBI would conduct the initial interview of Chris Watts at the police department, and then he would request that I conduct a polygraph with Chris later on. Chris was not a suspect. It's very important to not alienate Chris. And at this point, he knows the most about everything, and we really wanted him to help us find his family.
What do you think happened? At first, I really thought maybe she was just at somebody's house, just decompressing. Going off scene. Yeah. But after today, like with the onslaught of, all the police cars, all the news, all the canine units, it's making me lean the other direction about someone took her. Okay. And it's freaking me out.
I was able to watch a live feed video of the interview as it was happening, and it was extremely important to get a baseline story from Chris.
This husband whose wife and children are missing, he's the last one to have seen them. He can give us the information that we need to help find them.
Special Agent Coder had Chris actually write out a written statement, and so they spent, several hours going over Chris's statement in great, great detail.
So, 1:40 a.m., doorbell, detects the visitor. It showed Nicole dropping her off. Okay. 2 a.m., Shanann gets in bed with me. 4 a.m., that's when my alarm goes off for work. Start having a conversation with her about putting the house up for sale and talking about proceeding with the separation. Okay. And it gets pretty emotional because we have 2 beautiful kids and we have one on the way.
Chris's first interview was basically live on the 5 o'clock news. When asked about the last time he saw his wife, Shanann, and their daughters, he described their final conversation. It was a strange detail to share on national television, almost as if he were laying groundwork for a future explanation. Then, in a pleading tone, he said, "I just want everybody to come home. Wherever they are, just come home." His words should have evoked sympathy, but something about his demeanor felt off. The concern he professed for his missing wife and daughters seemed rehearsed, mechanical. Even though people grieve in different ways, Chris's calm, detached behavior was striking. His voice lacked the desperation of a husband and father whose entire family had vanished. He stood before the cameras clean-cut and composed, carefully choosing his words. It raised red flags for many. Chris continued his public appeal. "I need to see everybody again. This house is not complete without them. Please bring them back." But for investigators watching the interview, alarm bells were ringing. One of them, Special Agent Graham Coder of the FBI, turned to his colleague and said, "We need him in a room with us, recorded. We need to get his story down, now." That evening, they invited Chris to the police station for an interview. He was not a suspect at this stage. In fact, it was crucial to keep him cooperative, as he was still the best source of information. Special Agent Coder would conduct the interview, and later he would request a polygraph. Chris sat across from the FBI agent. "What do you think happened?" Coder asked. As the interview progressed, Chris wrote out a formal statement. He claimed that Shanann had arrived home from a business trip at 2 a.m. and gone straight to bed. A few hours later, he woke up for work. Investigators had already accessed Shanann's phone and discovered messages that painted a different picture. She had confided in friends about Chris becoming distant. She had suggested counseling. Chris had resisted. Something wasn't adding up. Chris's response was unsettling. "Did I cause this?" he asked. "Did I make her feel like she needed to leave?" On the surface, it sounded like a moment of guilt-ridden self-reflection, but seasoned investigators knew better. This was classic misdirection.
At that point, we had Shanann's phone, and some of the things that we were learning from going through Shanann's phone is that she'd been talking to a lot of her girlfriends about Chris becoming very distant. They had even talked about counseling, and Chris was resistant.
It was very emotional. We were both crying, and at the end, we just said, she said she was going to take the kids to her friend's house for the day. She would be back. Okay. I was like, okay.
Looking back on that conversation, can you connect the dots between both of you being upset and crying, and here we are, and now she and the kids are gone?
I think about, did I cause this? Did I make her feel like she needed to leave? Maybe she sat there and thought about it, do I really need to stay here right now? If he doesn't love me, maybe I should just go.
It seemed like Chris was definitely taking a small portion of responsibility for her disappearance. But I felt like Chris was not being honest and was not telling the complete story. At that point, Special Agent Coder really needed to kind of turn up the heat.
The day she goes missing is the day that you guys have marital discord. So you can understand what I'm thinking about you.
Yeah. Makes me sick to my stomach, honestly. This is something that I would never do.
Are you telling me the truth?
I'm telling you the absolute truth.
Why should I believe you?
Because I'm a very trustworthy person.
Special Agent Coder has a very soft, soothing almost type of voice when he was talking to Chris. But at the same time, he was asking very, very tough questions.
Do you know where your wife is?
I don't know where my wife is.
Are you telling me the truth?
I'm telling you the absolute truth.
Okay.
We really hadn't seen any emotion from him up to that point, and we wanted to see if maybe faced with the pictures of the people that he said he loved and that are missing, to see if that would elicit any more information or any emotion from Chris.
Celeste loved those shoes, even though they were winter shoes, but she loved those shoes. She always loved those shoes. And Bella, she loved that dress. She loved those flip-flops. She was a girly girl.
If he is hoping and believing that they're still alive, so why would you start talking about them in past tense? That's obviously a red flag.
So I need to ask you about your marriage and infidelity.
Okay.
Okay, tell me about it.
I have never cheated on my wife.
Okay.
And I fully suspect she has never done that to me.
Oh, okay.
I fully expect if we ever thought about straying another way, that we would tell each other before it happened.
I think that sounds ridiculous. I gotta ask, what's her name?
I don't have another one.
You sure?
I'm sure.
Okay.
I definitely needed to know what was the reason for the separation. What was the reason behind wanting to possibly end his marriage? If you weren't having an affair, Chris, what is it?
Why are you falling out of love?
I couldn't be myself around Shanann anymore. Does that make sense at all?
The timing doesn't make sense to me.
People just fall out of love, and that's where I was.
I gotta tell you, that sounds like a load of horse shit.
I know.
There's what Chris is saying, and there's what Chris is not saying. Chris was not imploring us to go find his family. He was not giving us additional tips to follow up on. He did not honestly seem interested in the investigation. So Special Agent Coder needed Chris to try and explain his actions.
I can tell that there's just something you're not telling me. Why you're not telling me that there's something that's making you a little bit uncomfortable.
Our initial thought was to do a polygraph that evening, just so we could either determine if he had something to do with her disappearance or we could rule him out. But his interview with Special Agent Coder was over close to 3 hours. It was past 10 o'clock. He's tired. It's not an ideal situation to try and start a polygraph that can be very extensive. And we really wanted to start fresh with him. So at that point, we asked Chris if he would come back the next day for a polygraph.
So can we say that tomorrow at 11 o'clock?
Sure.
We can do a polygraph?
Sure.
Here.
When Chris left that evening, investigators spent the entire evening combing through his computer records, cell phone records, and what we learned from that analysis really changed the entire course of the investigation.
The disappearance of a pregnant Frederick woman and her 2 children has captured the nation's attention.
Shanann Watts and her 2 young daughters haven't been seen in the last 2 days.
Police say Watts, who is 15 weeks pregnant, and her 2 daughters, Celeste, age 3, and Bella, age 4, haven't been seen since Monday morning.
He was subtly steering them toward the idea that Shanann had left on her own. Coder leaned forward. The day she goes missing is the same day you have this emotional conversation. You understand what I'm thinking, right? The cracks were showing. Coder remained patient, but firm. He pulled out photos of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, laying them in front of Chris. "Look at them," he said. "What happened?" Chris picked up a picture of Shanann. "She loved those shoes," he murmured. "She loved that dress. She was a girly girl." The agents knew he was lying. That night, they combed through Chris's digital footprint. His phone records, emails, and GPS data revealed something crucial. He had been having an affair with a coworker. This changed everything. If Chris was willing to lie about this, what else was he hiding? The affair introduced a potential motive. Was he trying to start a new life without his family? The next morning, Chris returned to the police station, this time accompanied by his father, Ronnie. Before his scheduled polygraph, another bombshell dropped. Investigators had obtained more text messages from Shanann's phone. They revealed that Shanann had suspected something was off. In one message, she told a friend she felt like Chris didn't love her anymore.
And we also worked with Frederick Police Department to organize a roadside canvass.
Did you by chance hear about the woman children that went missing on Monday over here?
Yeah, it's all over Facebook.
This is a very visible effort on the part of Frederick Police to make sure the word is out about Shanann.
There are no signs that this investigation is slowing down in any way. It is a very, very active investigation at that point. Crime scene analysts are still combing through Chris's residence. We're still following up on leads. Witnesses are being interviewed. Tips are coming in. Obviously, we were hoping so much that Shanann would just show up with the girls.
Can I go have a seat right here, Chris?
When Chris arrived for the polygraph that morning, he was with his father that he had just picked up from the airport. So Special Agent Coder brought his father, Ronnie Watts, down to another room.
So how are you feeling today?
Sick to my stomach, honestly.
Shortly before Agent Tammy Lee from the CBI is going to conduct this polygraph examination, investigators learned information that they had not known before. We looked at Watts's phone. It was revealed to investigators through text messages, photographs, emails, that he very clearly and for quite a period of time had been having an affair with a coworker at the oil company that he worked at. He had been lying to Graham Coder the day before. If you're going to be deceitful with law enforcement about that, what else have you been deceitful about?
It changes for us the possible motive. If Chris did do something to his wife and children, this could be the catalyst for that. Or if she left, did she really know about this other person? It kind of brings a whole different dynamic into the investigation.
The first day I thought, okay, she was just somewhere.
Sure.
And after yesterday, all the activity at my house, it went to the other extreme. I've just been like sick to my stomach that either somebody has her or she's in trouble and the kids are not safe either.
Right.
With this new information she's got about the affair, she has to be careful because there is a fine line to walk there between employing investigative techniques to get the information that you need while not going so far as to completely cause a suspect to shut down.
There's actually only 2 ways you can fail a polygraph, okay? First way would be if you fail to follow my instructions. The second way would be if you choose to lie to me.
Obviously, my wheels are turning in my head, but at the same time, I didn't want to give him any indication that I knew about the affair.
I hope that, if you did have something to do with their disappearance, it would be really stupid for you to come in and take a polygraph today.
Exactly.
Right?
It would be really dumb. Like, you should not be here right now sitting in this chair if you had anything to do with Shanann and the little girl's disappearance, okay?
I was putting Chris on high alert that the truth was about to come out and everyone was going to know what it was.
She even confronted him about his sudden coldness. Chris had denied everything. Now, with mounting evidence against him, Special Agent Tammy Lee prepared to administer the polygraph. She knew this was a pivotal moment. If he failed, it would shatter his credibility and push him closer to a confession. Chris sat down, strapped in, and took a deep breath. After the test concluded, Agent Lee left the room to analyze the results. A few minutes later, she returned. His face drained of color. Chris shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't talking yet, but he was breaking, and the investigators could feel it. They had him cornered. There's actually only two ways you can look at this situation. Either you believe what the officers claim, that the suspect was a threat, armed and dangerous, forcing them to act in self-defense, or you see this for what it truly is. Another example of abuse of power, a situation spiraling out of control, and a system that repeatedly fails to hold those in authority accountable. It started like any other day, quiet and unassuming. The suspect, just another man going about his life, had no idea his routine would end with sirens, flashing lights, and gunfire. The officers involved had already made up their minds about him before they even stepped out of their vehicles. They saw a threat, not a person. Their actions were dictated not by the reality of the situation, but by their perception of it, one that turned out to be deadly. The call came in around noon, a possible armed individual loitering near a convenience store. Witnesses later stated that they saw no weapon, no signs of aggression. Yet the officers responded as if facing an imminent danger, arriving on the scene with their hands already on their holsters. Body cam footage, later released to the public, showed them approaching the suspect with aggression, barking orders before even assessing the situation properly. "Get on the ground, hands where we can see them," they shouted, their voices sharp, commanding. The suspect, visibly confused, hesitated for a second too long, and in that moment, everything changed. The officers claimed he reached for something, his pocket, his waistband. They weren't sure, but that was all they needed. The sound of gunfire erupted, splitting the air like a violent thunderclap. The suspect collapsed, clutching his chest, gasping for breath as his life slipped away. As the dust settled, questions began to rise. Why did they shoot so quickly? Why was de-escalation never an option? The department, in its official statement, defended the officers, stating that they followed protocol. The suspect, they claimed, had made a threatening movement, one that justified their response. But what about the witnesses who said otherwise? What about the body cam footage that showed hesitation rather than hostility? The press conference that followed was a masterclass in deflection. The police chief stood before flashing cameras, reading from a carefully crafted statement. "Our officers were faced with a split-second decision," he stated. "They acted in the best interest of public safety. No apology, no acknowledgement of error, just the same empty words that had been used too many times before." As public outrage grew, so did the pressure for an independent investigation. Protests erupted across the city, fueled by anger, by grief, by the unbearable weight of injustice. Signs bearing the suspect's name filled the streets. His family, broken and devastated, demanded answers, demanded accountability. But as history had shown time and time again, the wheels of justice turned slowly, if they turned at all. Days turned into weeks, and still, no charges were filed against the officers. They were placed on administrative leave, a temporary exile that meant little. The district attorney's office promised a thorough review of the evidence, but the skepticism in the air was thick. People had seen this before, an investigation that led nowhere, a case closed without consequence. Then came the leaked footage. A higher quality version of the body cam recording surfaced, contradicting key elements of the official narrative. It showed the suspect with his hands raised, confusion etched on his face. There was no sudden movement, no aggressive gesture. The justification for the shooting crumbled under the weight of the truth. The department scrambled for damage control. The officers, once defended so vehemently, were now placed under internal review. Statements were revised, narratives adjusted, but it was too late. The public had seen what really happened, and there was no undoing that. Pressure mounted for criminal charges. The district attorney, now facing immense scrutiny, had no choice but to present the case to a grand jury. The officers were indicted, a rare but significant victory. But would a conviction follow? The legal system had a way of protecting its own, of twisting justice into something unrecognizable.
So I brought Graham in here because we want to talk to you about the results, okay?
When I walked back in the room with Special Agent Coder, my attitude had completely changed, on purpose. I was no longer Chris's friend. I was no longer this joyful investigator that's just here to administer this polygraph. Now I'm here for the truth.
You did not pass the polygraph test.
Okay.
Okay.
I did not lie on this polygraph. I am...
It's not even an option right now because you did not pass the polygraph, so I know you were being deceptive, so that's not even an issue right now. The issue right now is what happened to Shanann, Bella, and Celeste.
Like, I want them back home, like...
But you know they're not coming back home.
I was shutting down his continued plea for his wife and kids to come home, because at that point we knew that was not going to happen, and I felt like he had done something horrible to his wife and the kids.
This is where the rubber meets the road, Chris.
Immediately after he's confronted with the deception, within just a couple of minutes, he starts to offer investigators a reason as to why maybe he showed deception on the polygraph. And he chooses the most innocuous thing that he could possibly admit to.
I cheated on her. I'm not proud of it, so I don't want to get her involved in this. I don't want to ruin her life.
We knew all about Nikki. So we didn't need to ask you about her in the polygraph. We just didn't need to, because we knew, okay?
Special Agent Coder kind of adds that in at the end, you know. We knew way more than we're letting on. It was just kind of the gateway to finding out what the bigger lie was, because we knew it wasn't just about the affair.
This should have been a time in your marriage where you guys were happy and thriving and productive, okay? And I believe that Shanann's the reason none of that happened.
You know, it's common in these types of cases that there's some victim blaming, so that it's easier for the suspect to say, yeah, it wasn't all just me. Like, I did it because they pushed me to it, or I was forced to do it. Giving Chris a possible reason as to why this would have happened.
I believe that she's a controlling person. Maybe doesn't listen to you as much as she should. I think that she can do whatever she wants and you can't.
Agent Coder and Agent Lee are providing him other alternatives, other possibilities as to what may have happened, other reasons that something may have happened, in an effort to try to see what his reaction is going to be.
Chris, did Shanann do something to them?
No, I don't know.
I'm serious.
I have no clue.
No, you would have known, because they didn't leave the house. Did Shanann do something to them, and then did you feel like you had to do something to Shanann?
They were at the house when I left. They were there.
Vilifying Shanann, it's a technique that we can use to eventually get the actual truth. We just needed to find Shanann and the girls.
Maybe Shanann did it, and you felt compelled to fix this so Shanann didn't look bad. I feel like you cleaned up for her. But I don't know, you're not telling me that, so it makes me think the worst. Like, did you do that to all three of them?
I did not do anything with these kids.
He was definitely more deflated. He was kind of hanging his head down. He kind of seemed exhausted from it all, honestly.
Can I talk to my dad or something? I just can't talk to my dad. Like, I flew across the country.
Watts makes a request of the investigators to speak to his father. They have to make a decision on the spot. They don't have an opportunity to make a phone call to their supervisor. They don't have an opportunity to call somebody from the DA's office and say, hey, what do you think I need to do?
There were so many things in play at that moment that it was such a risky move, and we had to really make a split-second decision on whether we could allow Ronnie Watts into the interrogation room or not.
Hey, Crash, how about this?
If we brought your dad in here, would you please tell him what happened?
Can I go out there and talk to him?
Well, I don't know that you want to do it out there because there's a lot of people going through the halls. Should we bring him in here?
So we'll step out. Okay.
Can you give me this with it? Okay.
You have him on the ropes. You can see it. The risk you run is that a father, Ronnie Watts, walks into the room, turns into the protective father for his son, and tells him, you need a lawyer.
Hey, Chris.
He lawyers up, this interview's over.
Tell us, Chris.
Can I talk to my dad or something?
Special Agent Coder and I agreed to allow Chris's father to come into the room.
Hey, Chris, we're gonna let you have however much time you need, okay? Sure.
You know, Chris was not in custody. Chris had every right to walk out of that room at any moment. So we were trying to appease Chris, if you will. We wanted him to know, you know, your father wants to know what the truth is. He flew across the country to support you, and he's not going to stop supporting you just because you tell him what happened.
We had absolutely no idea which way this is going to go. Is he going to come in and protect his son and shut us down, or is he going to encourage him to tell the truth?
As soon as Ronnie entered the room, Special Agent Coder and I had pretty much ran to the observation room in order to watch the interview. It was definitely a make or break moment. They were speaking very quietly, so everyone in the command post was silent.
Tell us how long or this polygraph failed it. Too much emotions. So I mean, they're not gonna let me go. Is there any reason why they shouldn't? They know I had an affair. Anything else you want to tell me? What's going on? I don't want to protect her. What? I don't want to protect her. She hurt him? Yeah. Yeah, not hurt her. You hurt her? Talking to you guys one time? When I was downstairs, they came back up and they were gone. Did she kill him? They're blue. She choked both of them to death. I freaked out at the champagne with her. So she killed both CC and Bella. Choked them to death. That's rage. I'm bad.
As the trial loomed, the city held its breath. The courtroom would become the stage for a battle between truth and power, between justice and the status quo. The officers, armed with a formidable legal defense, would argue that they acted out of fear, that their instincts led them to pull the trigger. But would the jury see through the facade? Would they recognize the difference between fear and recklessness, between instinct and prejudice? For the suspect's family, this wasn't just about their loss. It was about every victim before him, every name turned into a hashtag, every case that had ended without justice. They stood in that courtroom not just for their son, their brother, their father, but for everyone who had ever been failed by the system. What a horrible, horrible thought that is. Standing there, looking at those oil tanks, realizing just how small the hatch at the top is, the sheer horror of what lay within, and then the unthinkable task of pulling them out. I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy. The first tank contained Cece. She was still in her nightgown. It was what she had gone to bed in, an innocent reminder of her last peaceful moments before her world was torn apart. The second tank held Bella. The image is something that can never be erased. It lingers, haunting every thought. How could someone who supposedly loved their family do something so monstrous? I've been in law enforcement for over 30 years. I've investigated or been involved in more than 170 homicides. I've seen the darkest depths of human depravity, but I rarely let it get to me. This was different. This case reached into my soul and refused to let go. There was now the painstaking task of determining the cause and manner of death. Did their injuries align with what he told us? The pathologist concluded that Shanann Watts had died from asphyxiation due to manual strangulation. The most significant injuries, however, were found on Bella. Her body showed clear signs of a struggle, evidence that she fought back, that she tried to save herself as someone forced the life from her. The thought of her last moments, struggling for breath, her tiny hands possibly clawing, trying to break free, it was gut-wrenching. Chris had tried to spin his own story, claiming he had seen Shanann strangling Cece, but the autopsy results shattered that lie. Cece had died from asphyxiation due to manual smothering. This was irrefutable proof that Shanann had nothing to do with the deaths of her children. It was Chris. It had always been Chris. We left the autopsies knowing with absolute certainty that Chris Watts was solely responsible for the deaths of his entire family. Under Colorado law, an unborn child cannot be the victim of homicide, but that didn't mean his life didn't matter. His name was Nico. They had already chosen his name. We charged Chris with the only crime that the law allowed, wrongful termination of a pregnancy. It was the only way we could ensure that Nico was recognized as another of Chris's victims. Then came another revelation, another woman, a mistress. The moment we got her name, she called into the tip line. "I'm the other woman," she confessed. After a thorough investigation, we found no evidence that she had any involvement in the murders. She was just another victim of his lies, another person who had been deceived by the mask he wore. The case had gripped the nation. Reporters swarmed the courthouse. Cameras followed every step. Prosecutors filed motions for fingerprints, cheek swabs, hand pictures, anything that would further solidify his guilt. It was sickening to realize that mere hours after committing these atrocities, Chris had stood in my house, shaking my hand, pretending to be a grieving husband and father. That was one of the hardest pills to swallow, knowing that he had murdered his wife and daughters, then turned around and played the role of the devastated husband. We were preparing for a trial that would last years. The evidence was still being gathered, witness testimonies compiled, but then, suddenly, the phone rang. Detective Baumhover's voice was almost in disbelief. Chris is going to plead guilty. It was a relief. No drawn-out trial, no forcing the families to sit through months of horrifying details. Chris Watts had pleaded guilty to all charges. First-degree murder for Shanann, Bella, and Cece. Unlawful termination of a pregnancy for Nico. The only way we would accept that was if Shanann's family wanted it. Sandy Razuchek, Shanann's mother, made one thing clear. He made the choice to take those lives. I do not want to be in the position of making the choice to take his. Her words carried weight. It was a profound moment. Chris Watts was sentenced to 3 life sentences plus 84 years in prison. There was relief, but also frustration. It felt unfinished. By pleading guilty, he admitted to the murders, but he never truly told us what happened that night.
Are they all 3 out there, Chris? Yes.
Chris talked about the area being very vast. He talked about it being maybe 10 miles by 20 miles. So to me, it was very, very important that he actually describe in detail where they were at that site, just because there were so many different places where he could have buried them or hidden them.
What is that?
That's the Derby 319.
Okay. Whereabouts is Shanann and the girls? Okay, can you mark it for me? That is for Shanann. Okay. And where are the girls at?
Here. Are they in the tanks?
What's in the tanks?
It's a mixture of oil and water.
I just couldn't believe a father could do something so horrible to his children and his wife.
There was a sheet found down here?
Mm-hmm.
Where's that from?
That was what Shanann was wrapped in.
I was completely disgusted. I felt sick. But at the same time, I was like, we need to go get them. We need to go get them right now. I knew everyone's lives were going to be changed from that moment on.
That changed when we flew to Wisconsin. Sitting across from him, we needed to hear it from his mouth that Shanann had not murdered her children, that it had been him all along. And then he spoke. He described how Shanann had been confused and hurt when he told her he no longer loved her, how he had climbed on top of her, how she begged him to get off, said he was hurting the baby, how she told him he would never see his kids again, and how, in that moment, he decided to end her life. But the most horrifying revelation was yet to come. The girls had been alive when he drove them to the oil site. They had seen everything. Bella had watched as he took Cece as he smothered her. Then he took her to the oil tank. Bella had watched as her sister was dropped inside. And then it was her turn. Chris said he heard her last words that haunt him even now. "Daddy, no." Even the agents in the room, seasoned investigators who had seen the worst humanity had to offer, struggled to comprehend the pure evil of it. He had an entire hour to change his mind, to turn around, to let them go. And yet, he didn't. Even in that final moment when Bella was staring up at her father, pleading, he still went through with it. After that interview, no questions remained. There was no mystery anymore, only horror. Shanann, Bella, Cece, and Nico had their story told. The truth was out. Shanann had been a woman who wanted to make a difference. She adored her daughters. Her life revolved around them. Bella and Cece were innocent, beautiful children who deserved to grow up, to live full lives. And Nico, an unborn child who never even got the chance to take his first breath, was robbed of a future before he ever had one. That's all for this video. What are your thoughts about this case? Let us know in the comments section. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon for more interesting videos like this. Thank you for watching our video.